You're listening to the Spark Radio Network, internet radio like you've never heard before. Innovation, creativity, and imagination are all said to begin with a spark. So fasten your seatbelt and take the ride of your life and listen for the spark.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
It got up to like $68,000. My heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
The internet will never be the same. You're listening to K98Talk.com.
Whoa! Good God, y'all. What is it good for? Absolutely. Let's get set again.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your website, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round and round. It's too late to turn back now. You know I wouldn't if I could. 'Cause I'm proud as hell. I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, folks, well, happy Thursday evening. We are one day away. That's right. Friday is right around the corner. For some of us, it was a short week. For the rest of you, it's been 5 long days, and it's been a long time coming, but we're almost there. All right, well, 4, because tomorrow's still the 5th one, but hey. I'm a radio host. I'm not allowed to do math. It's just how I roll. So anyway, this is the Jenn and Rick Show. I am one half of the crew, the Mr. Rick Robinson, and I do have Miss Jenn with me, taking the other chair this evening. Good morning, or good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are all the way around the world, because Lord knows we get listened to everywhere, so it doesn't really matter what time it is. So hello to all of you. Good evening, Miss Jenn. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
Be doing better if I could remember what day it was and what time it was.
Well, we're getting waterlogged here, so I don't have a real good sense of time either, because we're just trapped inside all the time.
See, that was us last week. We have been getting like intermittent weird rain, but it always happens at like late at night. But the whole last week, it was like I kept waiting for Noah to float by, and it just never happened.
Oh my gosh, we started having like some of the worst thunderstorms we've had in the last few weeks at like 5 o'clock in the morning, which is really fun with a 2.5-year-old and a dog who is a little neurotic. So that's been great. But other than that, we haven't floated away yet, and Houston's in much worse condition than we are here. So I'm thankful.
It's also really fun with a Karen Terrier that looks like the dog from The Wizard of Oz and has the mentality of a 2.5-year-old. Which is why when we moved to the country, we bought him a shock collar. I'm just saying.
I'm calling PETA.
People for the eating of tasty animals, call them up. I'm good.
Exactly.
No, dude. I mean, side note, but since we brought it up, I have to say I actually felt sorry for him once, because the thing about it is we live on 2.5 acres. We like shoot outside all the time. So we're all outside shooting skeet, and all of a sudden he starts barking and going nuts and like shaking and everything else. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we can go ahead and put the collar on him, because eventually it usually just hits him about one time and it'll be on the lowest setting, and then he'll realize that he can't do it anymore, and he starts calming down. So I tell my oldest to go ahead and go in there and put the collar on him. So I go in to check on him, and every time the gun goes off, he would still bark even with the collar on. I literally felt sorry for him and took it back off, because the thing with that collar is each time they bark, if they don't calm down, it actually goes up. He barked so loud that he literally almost did a backflip right in front of my eyes when the collar went off. I was like, yep, that's it. That thing's coming off. I hate it when you bark. And when, like, the first time, he's usually pretty smart about it. The first time we put it on him, we walked him around the property, and he barked one time and he was done. So we usually only put it on him when he's outside or if there's a thunderstorm or something, because it usually only takes one little jolt and he's done. But with the gun, he was so terrified, he just kept trying to bark because he didn't know what else to do, and it literally just drove him insane. So I was like, yep, that's not going to work for this. So let's take that back off, and I'm going to come here, and I'm going to hold you for a while, because now I feel really guilty because I just watched you do a backflip because of a shock collar. Yeah.
Oh, boy. Poor dog.
So yeah, fun times. But anyway, sorry, still having a bit of a rough throat issue. It's been pretty busy at the day job for the last few days, so talking is not necessarily my friend. I was going to do something at the open of the show, but I think I'm going to save it till we come back from break, because it just seems like a weird time to break routine. So at this point, we might as well go ahead and just jump straight in. And I'm sorry, folks, I'm a little more discombobulated than usual, but I had a lot going on in multiple fronts, so I didn't have much prep time for this one, so I apologize to everyone in advance. But we do have lots to talk about, and I think the biggest lead story is the spineless jellyfish, otherwise known as the Speaker of the House. Boo.
Yeah. He was kind of one of the last, juggernaut holdouts that is currently an elected leader of the Republican Party.
I'm not sure I would say Eddie Munster was a juggernaut. Just saying.
But I think, this is obviously something we all expected to happen eventually. There was that little gleaming, shred of hope that maybe he would buck them all and decide to not actually endorse. But inevitable. I mean, much the way we were talking last week about the other, GOP leaders and politicians that do. I mean, they actually owe the GOP something. They're going to get pressured. The GOP wants a win. And I don't blame them, but so that this is not this is not something that is actually like a private citizen endorsing, but it's still disappointing nonetheless. And, but I think that there were a couple key things about his endorsement. Number one was he released this in his hometown paper and also on Twitter about midday today. And it was stated that he did not give Trump or any of Trump's people, campaign, anybody, the heads up that this endorsement was coming. And I think that kind of is important because it shows that in all of these other endorsements, Trump has wanted to capitalize on them. He's wanted the extra press conference for them. You know, he's wanted to be able to pull them up on the stage next to him if he could and use it as another fundraising kind of campaigning moment. And I think Ryan kind of stole that from him in a way. And he also released it all during Hillary Clinton's speech, which we'll get to later. It was during that same time period. So it actually was being overlooked a little bit because Clinton was just nailing Trump to the wall today. So I think it's kind of important to see how he did this. I think he was sending his own little message. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but it just seemed like he did his best to kind of take this away from Trump and all of the fanfare that he would like to bring to the House Speaker endorsing him for president.
No, we were actually talking about that before we went on the air, and I completely agree with your assessment. The fact that he basically did it by putting it out in his hometown paper around the same time that Hillary Clinton was lambasting Trump and lambasting the Republican Party, and then it even got brought up by some folks that now that Ryan has endorsed him, it's basically solidified the fact that the GOP is 100% on board with Trump, which is going to make things even more crazy, in my opinion. But I mean, I don't necessarily begrudge him for doing it because I understand the mindset, especially if you are a politician who has run under the GOP flag. I'm sure you feel like you have some loyalty to that particular party. I'm not sure I still would, to be honest, even if I was one of the folks that ran under their banner and got elected, because I think the party has lost its way. And the fact that Trump is now the standard bearer and standards actually amplifies that point, in my opinion. But I think I've beat that horse enough over the last 6 months.
Yeah, I think that you're right. I mean, I think that there is a reasonable argument to be made that the GOP is no longer the party that elected you. You know, like this is no longer what you recognize as the R beside your name that you campaigned, you know, to be elected and represent. So I think that some people can have a very reasonable argument about that, particularly with the solidification of Trump's nomination. But definitely Democrats are happy. Are you kidding? I mean, they have wanted this to happen. They despise Trump, but they just sit there and salivate over him being the GOP nominee and all the stereotypes in which he embodies. You know, Senate Democratic leader Harry Reid today says, Speaker Ryan's abject surrender makes it official. The GOP is Trump's party now. Oh, good grief. I mean, they just now have this to completely latch onto. Everything that they've thought or all the narratives they've pushed about those backwards Republicans, they can now say, see, and look who they elected. And look at all of their major politicians, including House Speaker, who are endorsing him. Luckily, Paul Ryan's wasn't with overwhelming enthusiasm, but there's been a lot that have. And I think there was a couple of things that Ryan said talking about endorsing him. And he, you know, talked about how, you know, in the end, he looks all like there's no secret that he and I have our differences. And when I feel the need to, I'll continue to speak my mind. But the reality is on the issues that make up our agenda, we have more common ground than disagreement. And I know there are a lot of other Republicans, especially very hardcore Never Hillary people, that feel that way. But I think that it's important to note that he did say, like, it's no secret and I'll continue to speak my mind. Like, he's not just going to fall in line like a little puppy. We'll see how much that works out. But there are other people that responded that are enthusiastic supporters that are in government. Representative Hunter from California, who endorsed Trump very early on, says, I don't see why Donald Trump would move sideways or backwards or forwards to accommodate anyone's agenda. Talking about Ryan saying he'll still speak out and he's not comfortable with some of Trump's positions and he'd like for him to come around on some things. And this guy's basically saying, who cares? Screw that. He doesn't need to. Go be Trump. So that's, kind of frightening that there are elected officials that really are that enthusiastic about his nomination.
For all of the ones that are that enthusiastic about his nomination, this is how I feel you have made me feel about the Republican Party.
I hate this place. Nothing works here. The medications don't work. I've been here for 7 years.
I literally am glad I left. I'm just saying.
Oh, man. But yeah, I think that also, one thing, the judges list was brought up as an example of something that gave him a little bit more confidence to be able to, what seems like kind of unwillingly back Trump. But what were you just telling me before this about that, great list of conservative judges that Trump put out?
Oh, you mean the great list that he vaunted and said this would be the people that I would commit to, at least for this first judge's election. And he named all of these people, and it was like, this is my great plan. Guess what, folks? Guess where that list came from? Take a wild guess, because it wasn't any of Trump's people. The establishment that you guys have all been railing against, that he's been railing against, that he says sucks, that he says he's going to destroy, they fed him the list. I've been telling you all for months he was moving towards the establishment, and he was sending you every signal that he was going to do it, and you blindly followed along, saying death to the establishment. Trump's going to finally make them listen to us. No, he's not. He's become one of them right in front of your eyes. You just can't see it.
Right, which is something that a lot of us have been saying for a while now. Like, they can't make up their minds. Like, they either want these people that are quote-unquote establishment to come on board his campaign, so then thus doesn't that make him establishment? Or they, don't want them around at all, but secretly in the background they need their help. I mean, it's so convoluted. The establishment is nowhere close to this, evil conglomerate of masterminds that want to, control the GOP in some awful middle ground way. They're like so moderate and they just do Obama's bid, all this crazy crap that they spout.
Did you say
but really, like Trump's been falling in a lot of ways. He's been seeking the approval of the establishment all along.
So, wait, did you just say that the establishment were like evil masterminds?
I was saying they're not.
Okay, I was about to say, because if you took all of the GOP establishment and you hooked them up to some electrodes and tried to get their brain power to power a light bulb, it might flicker once. Maybe
I'm
once.
Saying not. Like, Trump tries to make it like, well, and his his supporters try to act like there is this like crazy, just like these masterminds like running the show like crazy behind the scene. And I do think that there is such thing as like, kind of the elite establishment, and that they try to set the tone and that they get the big donors and that. I do think that there is a certain amount of control, but I think this idea of the establishment has gotten blown so out of whack that it's like, what does it even mean anymore? Because it changes daily. Like, if you support Trump, then you're not establishment, but now that establishment people are supporting Trump, then they're not anymore. I mean, it's all over the place. They decide daily what establishment is and whether they like it or not.
That's because definitions can now be changed as easily as your gender.
I was about to say, they're fluid, like gender.
Did you ever,
there's no longer such a, negative connotation on the flip-flop, so...
I mean, just to put this in perspective, did you ever think we would see a time where you can basically go to whatever bathroom you feel like you should go into, and even if you are not, just because you don't agree with someone, all of a sudden you are a liberal or establishment or both or worse.
No.
The whole world has gone nuts. It's just insane.
Yeah, it's this year in particular, 2016, is far beyond what I could have imagined, especially in terms of the election. I'm still every time we talk, I'm like, I'm baffled. I don't get it. How did this happen? Why are we here? Pinch me, wake me up. But
I wish somebody could pinch me and wake me up. Somebody just tell me that this is all a bad dream and that we actually have a conservative that's actually running the GOP right now, not some liberal with bad hair.
What's funny is that there were a bunch of people when this all kind of started and the different, whispers about who would run and campaigns were happening, where there was a huge group of people that you and I are friends with and know that were absolutely never Bush, but at this point I think would gladly take a Bush to get rid of Trump. And that's how crazy far we've come. We've got people that are legitimately feeling better and more willing to vote for Hillary Clinton than they are for the GOP nominee. People that have been in the GOP for decades. People who have voted for, the Republican Party, who have worked in conservative grassroots movements all their lives, are seriously considering voting for Clinton over Trump because it's that bad where the GOP is now.
I never, ever thought that I would be on the opposite side of the argument than I was 4 years ago. Because I was the guy on the other side of this argument 4 years ago. When I'm looking at all these people that were libertarians that were like, I cannot vote for Romney, and this is why I can't vote for Romney, and I'm looking at him going, look, he's better than Obama.
I agree with you, and I was on that side a lot over the last,
last couple of cycles.
Yeah, several cycles, except for I think there's a very fundamental difference, and that is, well, kind of two, but I lump them together. Core values and principles. And even if you did not like certain aspects of, say, Romney's policies or McCain's, well, he was pretty moderate on a bunch of stuff, and, various other aspects of what he saw as needed to be done as far as governance, we weren't worried about the actual, character and moral fiber of this nominee. So I think it's very different in that regard, and they weren't complete wild cards that were just completely all over the map, that were crass and, knee-jerk, temperamental, and all of these things. So we could count on them to be statesmen, we could count on them to be principled, and we could count on them to, represent the GOP well. And a lot of people didn't necessarily like them, and they wanted something more conservative or less hawkish or whatever else. But it's very different than why people that are saying now they will not vote for the GOP nominee won't vote for Trump. Most of us are actually repulsed by pretty much everything he puts on the table, including his face.
Wait, he puts his face on the table?
Brings to the table, whatever.
I was going to say, I think that face wouldn't even deserve to be on the table.
I hope he doesn't put his face on the table. That's just weird.
All right, so, I guess, and again, it just goes back to what I was saying a moment ago. I really never thought I was going to be on the side of the argument, but everything that you just said is true. I mean, look, the two biggest things that I kept hearing about with Romney, well, the three, is he's rich. Okay, what friggin' politician that is trying to run for the president of the United States isn't rich before they ever get there? Can we just stop talking about that one for one? Because you have to have money anymore if you're going to do anything in politics. I know a guy that was trying to run for local office here and his campaign fell apart because he couldn't raise any money for a local office. So you can't tell me that when you're running for something national that you're going to need money, and a lot of people that are getting there are already rich in the first place, or at least pretty well off. Nobody's, I think, ever been as rich as this guy, other than Romney. But the other thing with it is he wasn't a Christian; he's a Mormon. Oh, okay, so I understand some people were balking at that one. And then there was the whole mass care thing. But every time anybody brought up mass care being the foundation for the basic building block for Obamacare, I kept pointing them back to the 10th Amendment. The 10th Amendment is very specific. Mass care is completely constitutional because that state has the ability to do whatever they want to do within their own borders when it comes to governing their own people, because that's what the 10th Amendment is for.
I 100% agree.
So, I mean, and that's the argument I've been making this whole time. I don't care if each individual state passes their own version of mass care, because if my state does it and I don't like it, that gives me the opportunity to move and leave and go somewhere where they align more with my ideals. But when the government shoves a cookie-cutter approach down your throat for anything from education to medical care, you are screwed, because one practice is not going to work in all 50 states. I don't care who you are.
Right. And that's something that, and I get judging him for being a part of mass care. Absolutely. You can do that. But like you're saying, I mean, we're against a federal mandate of any kind, not just that one in particular. And in this case, the state actually exercised their rights, and I'd rather any of that go that way. But again, like I said, all of the hits on Romney were not fundamentally about his character, his core values, or his principles. They were about specific things. And the Mormon thing is just because it gets a bad rap. Mormonism gets a bad rap. There's a lot of stereotypes, and it doesn't help with shows like, you know, the Multi-Wives reality show.
Sister Wives? Yeah.
Yeah, Sister Wives, that's right.
My wife actually watches
things like that don't help it at all. But
well, dude, I mean, I'm not going to lie.
There's
some
they were
weird.
scared of electing a Catholic, but it wasn't really because it's like, oh, you know, Mormons are all bad and crazy. There are people that think that, but mostly people thought that he was a statesman, and they had a few minor disagreements with him about some things, and those were enough to send them running another direction. Now we've got a guy who embodies basically nothing other than a supposedly hard
I got money and I'm going to do what I need to do to make the country great again. That's Trump in 2 seconds.
And you've got people running, and I think this time I can say, because I'm one of them, absolutely run like hell. Run like you're on fire. Because
some of us are wobbling away
to not back this guy. There are very, very real, legitimate reasons not to back him.
Some of us are wobbling away very quickly. Does that count?
Absolutely.
Okay, just checking.
As long as they're scooting.
I don't understand how we got here. I mean, I know we touched on this last week, but I'm still flabbergasted because I honestly do not understand how we as a collective group, with as many of us over these last 2 election cycles, have actually found ways to get involved, found ways to build grassroots movements, found ways to connect with other grassroots movements, built networks that are amazing, and connected with people all across the country that all have the same general mindsets as we do. And we still found a way to put the Barnum and Bailey circus in the freaking White House. It doesn't matter which one of these two get it. It's going to be a circus. It's going to be an excrement show. And I only said that because I can't say the actual word I normally say. I don't understand how we got here. Uh-oh. Speaking of I don't understand how we got here, I think the NSA is a little angry with me for what I just said. All right, I think she's back. Yay!
Yep, I am. For some reason, my internet disconnected for a second. It might be the weather.
I'm blaming the NSA.
But, okay, we're back. It was just weird. It just went blank, and then it came back on. So, here we go.
Yeah, it was like chirping at me for a second, then you were back again. I was like, oh, I hope she didn't lose power or anything because of the weather.
No, I didn't lose full power, but the internet just went out. I don't know. Sometimes that happens before other things happen, but we're not having like an actual storm right now. We've just had some area lightning, so I think we're okay though.
All right, well, now that we've managed to get her back, we are at the bottom of the hour, folks. We're going to have to take a really quick break. When we come back, more of the show, more of me probably being more whiny than usual, and we'll just keep on going.
Defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been through hell and I don't have time to go round and round.
All writers are prone to becoming so attached to our characters and stories that we struggle to see why a passage may not be working. It takes another set of eyes to help us nurture our writing to full maturity. At Black Wolf Editorial Services, we strive to enable writers to develop and grow, shaping stories into masterpieces that can stand the test of time. Editing services are provided for all genres and all age categories. Services range from critiques of the short story through to the line edits of the full-length novel and copy editing for those preparing for publication. We also offer assistance on generating a writer's bio for your websites, as well as help with those book blurbs and promotional material. We won't abandon you to the masses. We want to celebrate with you in your successes. Black Wolf Editorial Services, nurturing your writing into maturity. For a full list of services and prices, visit us at blackwolfeditorial.com.
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.
In these uncertain economic times, you've got to do whatever you can to save money. One of our biggest expenses can be our cars, especially when unexpected repair bills hit. Not anymore. If you own a vehicle with less than 130,000 miles, is less than 12 years old, has a warranty about to expire, or even no warranty at all, you could stop paying for car repairs. Roadside assistance, towing, and rental coverage are all included. Don't wait for the next repair. Make one free call right now to see if you qualify. If your vehicle is less than 12 years old, has less than 130,000 miles, even if it's out of warranty, paying for car repairs can become a thing of the past. Call us right now and get your car protected before your next repair bill hits. Get protection and no more repair bills. Call 800-696-1030. Again, 800-696-1030. That's 800-696-1030. 800-696-1030.
Joe had huge problems with the IRS.
I knew it was coming. I hadn't filed taxes since 1990.
All the IRS letters coming in added up to a nightmare.
To get up to like $68,000, my heart started beating fast. It's like, there's no way, man. I mean, I ain't going to be able to do this.
Then they stopped his paycheck.
So that's when I started making phone calls and found U.S. Tax Shield.
U.S. Tax Shield went to work immediately.
They just took the bull by the horns. What blew my mind is he called the IRS right then and there.
So why is U.S. Tax Shield A+ rated with the Better Business Bureau? Joe knows.
They saved me a ridiculous amount of money.
If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or state, choose the company Joe chose, U.S. Tax Shield.
It was the best decision I made. U.S. Tax Shield is the way to go. Life is good. Thank you, Lord.
Call 800-471-3287.
U.S. Tax Shield. Boo-rah. Yes.
800-471-3287. 800-471-3287.
Cause I'm proud as hell, I can't bring myself to do what it is you think I should.
All right, folks, we are back. We are live. This is the Jen and Rick Show. You're listening to us live on K98 Talk and Spark Radio Network here on Thursday, June 2nd, 2016. Just a few minutes past 9:35 Central, so 10:35 or 9:30 Central, 10:30 Eastern. Before we get back into the show, something I wanted to do at the opening of the show, but I kind of got into autopilot and forgot I wanted to do it. I want to touch on a couple things that were kind of an odd occurrence today. There were 2 plane crashes today that I want to touch on. One was an Air Force pilot that was part of the Thunderbirds who managed to eject safely. They did lose the aircraft, but not the pilot. There was, shortly thereafter, one of the Blue Angels crashed, but that pilot remained with the aircraft to make certain that the craft itself didn't crash into some nearby apartments, and sadly, that pilot lost his life. So I do just want to take a second to pay at least a little bit of a tribute to these folks that do put their lives on the line every day. We take them for granted all the time. We go to their air shows, we watch the crazy things they do, and we don't really realize just how deadly it is, the things that they do with those skills that they've been taught, even when they're not engaged in mortal combat. So I just want to take a second and just say, if you would, just say a prayer for those folks. I pray for anybody that's been impacted, especially for the folks that are connected with the pilot that was lost today, because it takes intense, insane bravery to stay with a craft when you know you could hit a button and put yourself out of harm's way just to make sure that other folks are not injured. And that is a true hero. Okay, now that I'm all personally choked up here, let's
Amen. It's pretty incredible. Takes a pretty incredible human being to have that resolve.
Well, I mean, it's what they sign up for, and it's, again, something that we take for granted every single day. And it brings me back to something, and I think you might have actually been the one that pointed it out. There was someone who I'm not going to name, who I recently got into a rather heated exchange on Twitter, and by the time it was done, they blocked me. And I'm not going to go into what we got in exchange about or anything else, because then you're going to know who I'm talking about. But there was someone who on Twitter actually quote tweeted someone who was in the military, but basically told them that they weren't honestly a veteran because they spent their entire military career in a building at HQ. That is someone who has no idea what it actually means to be a veteran.
Which also, by the way, they have no possible way of knowing if that statement is true or not. I mean, they have no way of knowing what every single day of someone's military career was like.
Look, I'm just going to be completely honest. I have more respect for the guys that push papers in the military than I do for that jackwagon.
Well, absolutely. But it's absolutely insane to say that you're, and I believe what he actually said was that you're someone who does something like that, like sits at a desk or this or this or that. Basically, someone who is not engaged in hand-to-hand combat was basically what he was saying. Or in otherwise, put in mortal danger, is simply a person whose employer is the military and nothing more. They are not actually a vet. And I find that so incredibly outrageous and just insulting beyond all measure to every single person that has ever signed up for our own forces.
I mean, to me, it's just another indication of exactly how far we have fallen as a country. Because if someone like that is saying something like that on social media, there are hundreds of thousands of people that think the same way that he does.
But however, I think that 3 years ago, if Obama or anyone related to anyone on the Democratic side said anything of the sort about someone just because of their political views, which is why this happened. This guy was attacking someone else because they do not support Trump, and that's the bottom line. And so that's why he's saying it. But I guarantee you this same guy, if years ago, even last summer, if someone on supporting Democrats had said the same thing, he would have quote tweeted the heck out of him. He would have disparaged him. He would called his own little Twitter army on to attack him, because it's absolutely absurd. But the sickness that is kind of Trumpism that has gotten in their brains has taken them so far in defense of him against all others that they would say something so awful like, you're not a vet. I don't care that you made a career out of it. I don't care what all you did in the Army. If you never engaged in actual combat, then you don't count. It's ludicrous.
Exactly. And it makes no sense to me. But, speaking of making no sense, this is a perfect segue into the last segment of the show. Something else that made no sense to me today was listening to some of the things that the Empress of Chappaqua had to say while she was on the campaign trail. Needless to say, everybody since the late 60s has talked about the fact that at some point in 1962-ish, 1963-ish, the Republican and the Democratic parties had switched places. That all of a sudden the folks that used to be pro-slavery were now the Republicans, and the folks that used to be anti-slavery, that used to be the Republicans, are now the Democrats, and that was all because of LBJ passing the Civil Rights Act, even though he point-blank said behind closed doors the only reason he did it was because if they could be the party that pulled it off, they would have the African-American vote, and no, he did not use that word, for 100 years. But I've never actually agreed with that sentiment until today, because if there was a swap back in the 60s, guess what? In 2016, it's happening again, right in front of our eyes. She sounds like a Republican, and he sounds like a crazy person. I'm so freaking confused.
Right. And actually today, I tweeted, because I was watching part of it. I didn't get to watch the whole speech, but then I, read some of the transcript and, went back and looked at some of it. But one part that I did catch just stuck out to me like a sore thumb. She says, Israel's security is non-negotiable. And by the way, she was so firm on this, the way that just her body language and the way that she said this. I mean, she was not reading she had this line down. She knew what she was saying, and she was putting it out there without having to check back at her teleprompter or look down at notes. She said, Israel's security is non-negotiable. They are our closest ally in the region. So I did a quote of that, and then I said, which candidate just said this? Hint, not the GOP nominee, who has been kind of wishy-washy on the whole, Israel's our friend thing. He
has to be, or he's going to lose the alt-right vote.
He said on Israel.
He has to be wishy-washy on it, or he's going to lose the alt-right vote. Oh, wait, did I say that out loud?
Oh, I don't know. They'll spin something else to make it he's doing it so that then he can control the Jews, and then who knows? Who knows? They'd figure out a way to put a spin on it.
But the scariest thing about that, though, just to go back, at this point we have a liberal Democrat who is running to the right of the Republican nominee, who's one of his main spokesmen, Roger Stone, has already said he would be running to the left of Hillary Clinton in a lot of predominantly civil-related issues. So so we have a crisscross going on. We have two Democrats. One of them is pretending to be a Republican while still running as a Democrat. The other one is labeled a Democrat and currently pretending to be a Republican just in the hopes of being able to beat Donald Trump. I feel like I need some sort of the drunk bingo scorecard to keep up. I'm just saying.
It's so true. And she went right along with a lot of the things that a bunch of, the never Trumpers have been saying, which is his vision is dangerously incoherent, not only of America, but of the world. That his temperament is embarrassing and perilous. She questioned his psychological stability. She slammed his admiration for authoritarians and how despicable that is, which is also kind of a funny thing about a Clinton saying that, but whatever. And then also she went on to say, and basically said that while he has been saying make America great again and has been disparaging what America has done for the last 20 years, for the last several decades, he's basically mocking and saying things about how awful everything it is, that she thinks, and this is something Obama never says, that this country is exceptional and indispensable. And normally that's something you're hearing from a conservative versus a lib, not the other way around. So it was really quite interesting. Of course, then she went on to expose herself in all the ways that, she is also just a despicable candidate.
Yeah, but, I just want to be clear for our listeners, just because we are touting the fact that she sounds sane right now doesn't mean we're buying into her crap.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's just amazing that this is the stuff coming from the most likely Democratic nominee against the GOP nominee, not the other way around. it's really quite fascinating to witness. But then she goes and exposes, as she does, who she is. You know, she's a Clinton, and praises the Iran deal, which is, don't get me started. And then she says something in particular that just really, I mean, I actually like laughed out loud, like almost spit my water out. There's nothing I take more seriously than our national security, says the woman under active FBI investigation for setting up an unsecure email server, which she conducted state business on, and directly threatens national security. But, you know, what do I know? No big deal. National security is certainly the most important thing to her.
So, you know, listening to a Republican sound like a Democrat and a Democrat sound like a Republican just reminded me of something, and it goes a little something like this.
You're traveling through another dimension. A dimension
Yeah, it's called the primary dimension, and the whole world's gone nuts because neither party knows who they are.
Exactly. It's I just watching her today, and then she made some comment about like, and he's probably sending nasty tweets right now, like talking about his temperament and, you know, all of his embarrassing ways in which he lashes out, and she was right. He tweeted about something. He tweeted something out and said to her, you know, like said something about her not looking presidential, and I'm like, oh, good grief! Like maybe you should not be the one that is throwing around what is and isn't presidential right now. But also he had a misspelling in that tweet, and it's just a mess.
But wait, remember, just a mess. He has a bigly huge IQ, so he doesn't have time to worry about spelling. Yeah, bigly. So bigly. He was just playing right into everything she was saying. And I don't think it makes much of a difference to a lot of, to anybody that's already sold. But anybody that's on the fence, and especially, I guess, maybe those Sanders fans or people that just don't really know what the heck's going on, they're just starting to pay attention. Some of the stuff she's saying, I think that's where you have to hit him is, you keep talking about his temperament and his and we all know he doesn't have policies, and I don't think that anyone really expected Donald Trump to be some policy-driven mastermind, even the most uninformed of our voting populace, I don't think expects him to. I mean, he makes deals. That's what he does. But I think when you keep knocking him on his actual personality and his character, it's when it really brings out the worst in him, and he just reinforces it tenfold. Yeah, I mean, it's just insane. It goes back to like, and the thing about it is I don't know if at some point, and I've said this as a joke now for a while, I don't know if at some point he's going to let the hairpiece that's pretending to, or the alien that's pretending to be his hairpiece actually stop talking, and he's going to start. But I'm really starting to think there's more than one voice in this guy's head, because he can't even keep up with his own stories anymore. Depending on who he's listening to or who he's around that is listening to him, he changes everything that he says. I don't understand how, in this day and age, when everything is basically recorded, because everybody has a camera in their pocket, and you see all of these bits and pieces of all of these speeches where he says something that's completely different than what he said 5 minutes ago, and yet when you call somebody on it, go back to his website, because he's not a polished politician, he's not a public speaker.
They just make excuses for him. That's all it is. They
spent years in front of a camera getting paid to do a reality TV show. Don't tell me he's not a freaking public speaker.
Right. Well, and beyond that, though, it does make it very... He has mastered a way in which it's very difficult to deal with and argue with him, because he very often will just look right back at whoever it is that's questioning him and say, no, didn't do that. And they'll go, here's the video. And he goes, no, didn't say that. But we just showed you the video. I don't care what you showed me. I didn't say that. And it's really hard to argue with someone who's in such Whether it's an actual tactic or whether he actually is that much in denial and really does have some sort of psychological issue going on, it is almost impossible to continue to debate with someone that takes that approach. There's just nothing you can say. When they just say no, there's just nothing you can say. You're just like, okay, well, then I guess we have to move on to something else. And you have to wait for him to hang himself with something else, which even when he does, people just make excuses. They just feed him the ways in which to excuse any and every misstep that he makes. Or they completely embrace it and cheer it on. Either way.
Speaking of missteps, while you were talking, I actually had something come across my newsfeed from the Washington Post. Apparently, he is now in a flame war with the PGA. I actually found some audio. Now, this may or may not play a commercial, because normally I will vet the audio before I put it in the show. But this runs for about 1 minute and 31 seconds, and it is a retort that he made on the campaign trail about a recent decision from the PGA. I haven't heard this, but if it's anything like the caption, it's kind of scary. Let's see if it will actually play or not. It may not want to with me trying to do 14 million things at once.
Imagine a credit card with the power to bring you...
I was afraid of that. Hang on. See if we can... Nah, it's going to buffer anyway, so it's not worth the trouble. All right, so I'm just going to read a little bit of this here. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump sent a warning to the PGA Tour after it said it will leave his Miami golf course in 2017 in favor of one in Mexico City. Not good, he said during a campaign rally in Sacramento, California, June 1st. If I become your president, this stuff is going to stop. For Trump, it marked the latest instance of singling out a person, institution, or industry he claimed was menacing him unjustly. It also raised new questions about how far he would be willing to go as president to punish his foes. Last week, Trump criticized U.S. District Judge Gonzalo Curiel, who is hearing a fraud case against him, against now the defunct Trump University, with deeply personally and racially tinged language. In a combative news conference Tuesday, Trump also said that as president, he would not back down from fierce criticism of journalists he thinks are covering him unfairly. This is the person that we are about to hand the keys of the White House to, and no one is paying attention. I mean, look, I don't know if he's going to be the guy or if it's going to be her, but they're both equally nuts, so what difference does it make?
Right, they're both terrible. Well, I found a couple things about the PGA thing. So apparently, it wasn't so much that the PGA was saying they wouldn't, do business there anymore and didn't want to hold the tournament there anymore, that it was actually they were having a hard time finding sponsorships. People not willing to sponsor it there. So that's interesting. And they didn't say exactly whether the sponsors said it was because of Trump or, what, or if there were other reasons, but it is disconcerting, and it lends to that authoritarian, tone that he takes when he says, things like this won't happen if I'm president. What? You're going to make someone like the PGA, you're going to force them to hold a tournament where you say so? I mean, no, you don't. There is, by any stretch of the imagination, is there a way for you to do that as president?
You will do these things that I have told you to do because I've told you to do them, for I am Mojo Jojo.
And that is what's so scary.
That's Donald Trump.
I'm going to make a golf tournament, stay at my golf course. That's what I'm going to do as president. Vote for me.
Because it's not fair.
It sounded like Obama. That was weird. I don't know why I did that.
That was actually not a bad Obama, just for the record.
I didn't even mean to. Anyway. I just went into it. I don't know. Whatever. Let's move on.
So you don't want to talk about the fact that apparently you've listened to Obama so much that you subconsciously sounded like him? That's a little creepy.
This is probably true. Oh, good grief.
Well, believe it or not, my friend, we're nearly out of time.
Yeah.
We got about 5 minutes left. Anything else you want to touch on?
No, but I think, so Jess was just saying on Twitter, she's like, Trump hates the First Amendment, and he's not really a fan of the Constitution either. And that's kind of what all of this boils down to, is he is so used to being the one in charge, and that, he gets all of his directives are followed. And if they're not, then he boots them. And that I just don't think that there is a way for a personality, for someone that has held jobs like he has and been this kind of titan of real estate and whatever else. And then also with the kind of personality he has, how that correlates to the White House without becoming authoritarian. I mean, that's just a logical conclusion. This is not some crazy conspiracy theorist. Like, it just logically leads to the fact that that's how he will try to lead as president, is in the same way that he has led otherwise. So we're screwed.
Yeah, either way. And the thing about it is, and I think maybe, some of the stuff that's been going on behind the scenes for the last couple of days, but on top of that, I actually, for the first time, took a really long, hard look at the Libertarian Party, and they basically gave an FU to anybody that was conservative, that was looking at Austin Peterson, and they decided to make the hippie their nominee.
Yeah, amongst other insane things that happened at their convention, and just crazy things that were said. It's like, this is the year that, like, you could have really made a case and made a splash, and y'all decided to, like, do cartwheels into Jello-filled pools instead and be like, yeah, we're great. I mean, I don't understand all the thinking behind that.
I don't understand all of it, because they had they had a decent shot last 4 years, because that's when a lot of people started shifting that way. But with as crazy as this election got, there were people that had never looked at the Libertarian Party that were honestly looking at them. And unfortunately, what they found when they really started looking scares them worse than the GOP.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen come November for me.
I don't know. I mean, I honestly want to keep the Libertarians on the ballot in Oklahoma, so I will probably vote Libertarian just to try to make sure.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction there. It's like voting to keep them on the ballot for sure.
Because with Oklahoma, our campaign laws our election laws are archaic. They had to jump through a million hoops to even get put back on the ballot. They've only been on the ballot one other time, and that was like back in '84. So, but they've lowered the threshold to keep them on the ballot this time. So I think in my instance, because I can't vote for Hillary and I can't vote for Trump, I'm going to say, even though he's just as nuts, trying something new that's nuts is better than going with the two nuts that you already know. So in that instance, and because my state doesn't recognize write-ins, I feel I have no choice but to vote for the Libertarian nominee for twofold. One, at least it's not either one of those jabronis. And two, I may be one of the ones that helps keep the Libertarians on the ballot for a while, because just because they're crazy now doesn't mean I'm not holding out hope. Because it's either them or we have to build a new party, because conservatism doesn't have a home anymore. It really doesn't.
Right. But I mean, I think you were just talking about like being in order to keep a third party in general on the ballot because of the rules that Oklahoma has. I mean, that is a pretty sound reason when you don't want to vote for either of the major parties, a pretty sound reason to vote for them, even if you don't directly support the candidate they brought forth. So I don't know. I find that pretty compelling.
All right, well, we are officially at this point out of time. As you do every time at show close, why don't you remind folks what it is you do when you're not on here listening to me ramble and being a co-host?
Well, I mean, really what I'm doing is potty training. But otherwise, you can find me on Twitter at jholmstead and J.R. Holmstead on Facebook, and then at misfitpolitics.weebly.com.
For the record, folks, she's not potty training me. I'm old and I still like diapers. Just saying.
No, there's a little 2.5-year-old running around.
All right, and I am, of course, Rick Robinson. I'm here Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights on K98 Talk on America Off the Rails. Tuesday, Thursdays, we change up gears, and I take on a co-host for the Jenn and Rick Show. Also on 3 nights a week over on SHR Media, or 3 days a week, SHR Media, AMFM247.com. Leading Edge Radio Network, I think, is still carrying me, but they've pulled their schedule down, so I'm still giving them a shout-out anyway, because I know they were. And ICRN, which carries me live every time we're on, which includes you, by the way. I don't know if I've told you that, but they run this one too.
Woo!
So, anyway, so, and then of course there is the terrestrial flagship WNJC 1360 AM out of Philadelphia. We are still in the hunt to try to get placement on KLIF 570 AM out of Dallas. So if you're listening and you want us there, pick up your phone, tell them we rock, and tell them you want us there too. Did that sound desperate?
Nah.
Maybe it was a little.
Gotta do what you gotta do.
All right. Anyway, folks, we are out. I will be on WNJC tomorrow at 6 Eastern, and then again live with you tomorrow night right here on America Off the Rails. Going to go ahead and do a live show tomorrow night since I took an impromptu day off yesterday. So I'll be back with you live tomorrow night. But on that note, folks, we are out because I am overtime. Back soon. Take care. God bless.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same.
I'm not ready to end the fight. I'm not ready to back down. 'Cause I've been
This is Slickery Trigger for Rebel Road Tactical. With proper care and feeding, your pistol will be ready when you need it, there to save your life. Shouldn't your gear be that good? Whether you need a holster for comfortable everyday carry or a tough-as-nails holster for your next training course, Rebel Road Tactical has what you need. Check us out on the web at rebelroadtactical.com.